911, what are you reporting?
I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
My dog went flying through the air over the tree. I don't know how it did it.
Okay.
Damn it, I'm really confused. All I saw was my dog coming over the fence, and he was dead when she hit the ground. I didn't see any cars. All I saw was my dog coming over the fence.
What are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Did you see what it was?
It was standing up. I'm out here looking through the window now and I don't see anything. I don't want to go outside. Jesus Christ, you better...
Sure.
See ya!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
All right, folks, I want to welcome our guest to the show. It is Chris from Discover Sasquatch. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here, Brian.
I am glad you're here, man. So let's get right into it. Let's start with the basic stuff. Let's go back to the beginning. What got you interested in Bigfoot?
Well, I was always interested in Bigfoot my whole entire life. I watched every show possible that would come on. I'd seen it 7 or 8 times, continue. And of course, I thought it was just something that was in the Pacific Northwest that you would see in the Guinness Book of World Records. There was a picture of Bigfoot, and all the specials, you've seen the same names, the same guys. So you figured it's not that big of a deal, but out west in the Pacific Northwest. So I always followed everything. I watched everything. And then we got our cable. We switched our cable and we started streaming. I was introduced to YouTube. I put the words Bigfoot in YouTube, and from then on, I have been hook, line, and sinker with this. It just captivated my attention. And I'm like, I was watching these guys are out in the wild. I didn't even know it was a thing. I didn't know there was investigators. Honest to God, I didn't know there was people out there really doing this. And I'm watching a couple of things. I was like, I could really get out there and try that. I can at least go out and see if I can find those little structures that they're finding, or, follow them along. And that's how I got introduced to the Bigfoot world.
Well, you're here because you've had some experiences and you've had some encounters. This is an encounter show. Let's go there. Let's start with your first experience that you had when you were out in the woods. Where were you and what happened to you?
Well, I was here in Northwest Connecticut. I had a lot of first experience. My very first experience, I don't know what it was, but I could only imagine it was either a Bigfoot or a Dogman at this point, because now the Dogman is a new huge thing. But this was 7 years ago. We're at my research area that I'm still going to 7 years later. And we just checked out a couple structures that we found in the woods. It was about 5 o'clock. And we were walking out, and all of a sudden we heard a dog whimpering noise, like a dog got hurt, run over by a car. Whimpering. I'll even give you sound effects. How's that? And so me and my buddy said, well, maybe a dog got hit, so let's go check it out. So we turn around, we go into the woods where we hear this sound coming from, and all of a sudden we get there and there's nothing there. Up to our left-hand side now, 50 feet up, we hear the same sound again. We said, well, the dog got scared. He's hurt bad. Let's go up there and we'll go get him up there. And we got there, and guess what? When we got there was nothing there. 50 feet up to our right now, he's drawing us in. We get to this spot, the same exact thing. He's not there. My buddy goes, you know what? Whatever this is leading us into the woods right now. Leading us into the woods. Let's turn around and let's get out of here. So I said, that's a great idea. We have no flashlights. It's like dusk. So we turn around and we get back out to the logging road. And all of a sudden we hear this, like this weird sound. And all of a sudden a rock comes flying out of the woods and lands right in back of us. And we're like, holy cow. We never experienced anything. I never experienced anything like that. And my buddy sure as hell has never experienced that yet. And he's never been back in the woods since this all happened. And we took off down the road, and that was my first either Bigfoot, Dogman, and I don't know what it was experience, but that's how we were introduced to whatever's living in the woods.
Well, you definitely had some experiences where you got to see these things, if I'm remembering correctly from our other conversation. So why don't you take us into those experiences and tell us what you saw?
So I was involved in a project in Missouri, and that's where I had my first sighting of one on thermal. First night we checked in. Now I've never had a close-up encounter with these guys, and I only had that one I just told you about, other than seeing the structures here and there and finding a footprint. We found prints and all that, but we never had that close-up encounter yet. And I was invited out there, and I went out there, and the first night we were there, we pulled up in the afternoon. We found a trackway out in the woods and out near the water, and we casted all the prints. We went back to the campsite, and then we were coming back to check on pop up the prints because they're dry now. And on our way, we had a thermal video going, and off to our right, down in the creek, we had this little head. Go up like this, pop up, and then you'd see there, and you'd be like this, just like that, as fast as that. It was incredible. And then up again, he'd pop and look at us, and boom, gone like that. And my guys I was with, they're like, that's Sasquatch activity, check that out. So he's doing that. I see him on thermal. We go down, we pop up the footprints, we come back. He's gone. He went down into the creek and left. And then we went down, popped up the footprints and at the lake, and then we came back to the area, to our camp area, and then we went to bed. So I woke up, I don't know, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, I'm not sure what time it was, and I heard footprints coming, footsteps coming up. I heard footprints, and I heard footsteps coming up. I'm getting all wound up. Look at my hair starting to stand up now. I'm getting a weebie-jeebies. When you relive this stuff, it's like crazy 7 years later, too. And step by step, not thunderous steps, but, like you put your heel down and then you would rest your foot. And then your heel would come and he was far away. It took him like 15 minutes, and then he was right by my face by the tent. His foot stopped. I heard it crunch right by my ear. I'm sitting, my face is right there. We didn't have the rain gear on. I couldn't do it. I could not look up. I was terrified. I wouldn't do it. So what did he do? He comes down, and he comes up to me, and he comes up, and then all of a sudden, right on the side of my face, I felt his breath on my cheek. I started shaking for like 15, 20, I don't even know how long, 20 minutes, shaking. Now all of a sudden I get up, I got to go outside. I got to use the tree. And I'm like, how do I go out there now with this going? And the guy that was in the tent with me wakes up and shines a light on me. Pale white. He's like, dude, what happened? And I'm like, I told him. He's like, no way. Why didn't you wake me up? I said, I was too busy shaking to do anything. I couldn't do anything else. So I worked up enough courage to go out there and get to the tree and back. And that was the first night. So we've seen one on thermal now. The second night, we went up to a ridge about 2 a.m. in the morning, and we sat on this ridge, this rock on the ridge, and we pointed the thermal up and back of us. And there was one that was pacing between 2 trees. And I think I still can't figure out, but he was either nervous or he was trying to figure out what's going on. It's pitch dark. He can't see us. He doesn't know we're seeing him on the thermal because it was on the screen down underneath, and the thermal was up on a pole. So we're watching him go back and forth, and my buddy gets up and tries to goes to his knapsack to get something out of it. That creature or human or people, I call them a people, seen us 60 yards away in the pitch dark and hid behind a tree and started peeking at us out the side of the tree. The typical Bigfoot peek. And then he even at one point threw something at us. We could see him throwing the arm motion at him, and then he just turned around and flew right up the hill. And that was my introduction into the real deal Sasquatch world. And I still have that in the back of my head. It's just you go into it, you got that little fear factor in back of your butt. He came down and grunted on the side of my face. That's your first experience. That'll last for a long time.
Yeah, that's definitely too close for comfort, man. I've talked to people that have had similar experiences inside tents where these things have come up and mashed the side of the tents down, and even in some cases, like sit on the tent to, I guess, see if they can elicit some kind of a reaction. Because ultimately, I think these things are extremely curious about what we're doing. And that's really the only thing in my mind that would even have a remote explanation for that kind of behavior. I'm curious about the rock throwing. That you've had that in a couple of scenarios, and I've talked to people tons of times on the show that have had rocks and other things thrown at them. Did you get the sense, or do you have an opinion on what that is? Do you think it's just them trying to feel you out? Do you think it's an aggressive thing? What did you feel was going on when these things were chunking stuff at you?
I think personally that they're trying to get your attention. They want your reaction. Like I said, like you just said, they're curious. They want to get your reaction. They want to see what you're going to do, if you're going to hoot and holler. And I tell everybody this now. I said, let them throw the rocks at them. Don't pay attention to them, because the rocks will become more frequent. And it's like they want to get your attention. And then they use it to check on the camp too, because we've had circumstances where we leave the camp and we leave recorders coming, and you'll hear the rocks coming into the middle of the camp, trying to get a reaction out of the tents. And I think they use it for that. I think they use it for many things, but I think most of it is to try and see your reaction, because they get close sometimes, but I've never been hit by one ever. And I've had a lot of rock throws at us here, Connecticut, Missouri, Florida, a lot of places. I think that's my favorite thing, that the rock throws. I remember one in Missouri. I went to the truck to get something. I'm coming back. It's midday. All of a sudden it comes over the top of my head and hits the tree right about funk. And I'm looking around. And I'm like, where the heck did that ride? It was a big rock. I'm like, where the heck did that thing come from? But they missed me about 2 feet right over the top of my head. So I think to get your reaction, I think, or to use it as a defense probably, and check on situations. How close can they get?
The other thing you mentioned that has always fascinated me is the tree structures and the X formations and the fulcrum type things that people find in the woods. I've posted about it tons of times on social media. Some of the things I found here on the property, as recently as I put a video up on TikTok a couple of days ago with this weird tree that I found that was pulled and stuck behind and wedged behind 2 trees, and then to the point where it actually broke at one point. And I posted it up. I'd actually posted a couple of photos of it last year, but I posted this video recently, and people started chiming in, there's no way that could be natural. And I agree. I don't know how a tree could be wedged that way unless something had thumbs that did it, right? And it's a pretty good sized tree. I mean, it's, 8-10 inches in diameter at the largest point. And I've never been able to figure this out with the tree structures. Now, I see stuff on the property here all the time that looks like it could be something. It may be deadfall, whatever. And I post some of those videos and photos, and people are like, yeah, that's, snow load can do that. It's a natural thing. And I agree, right? But we were talking about Todd standing off the air. Todd's big thing about his research area up in Canada is all these tree breaks and how they point to certain things. I've had conversations with Doug Hychek about tree breaks and how they point to water sources and other things, or some of his theories. I'm not convinced of that. I'm not sold on that. So let me ask you, you found these things in multiple places, and you guys are finding this in footprints. What do you think about the tree breaks? Do you think it is Sasquatch doing these things? And if so, what do you have a theory on what they might be doing them for?
I do follow the snaps. Not all of them. You got to look at, the twist. If they're walking by and they grab that little tree and they break it like that, when you're walking, it's going to twist and fold. It's just not going to snap on it. And then you look how old the tree is, and if it's alive, or if it's green and you find a 2-inch diameter snap, how hard is that to snap a hardwood tree like that with one clean snap? That's very hard. It's something very, very strong. You have to look at every aspect of the snap. And if you find a couple in a row that are pointing the same way, I think it is a directional. And this is, again, it's just my opinion. I can't tell you 100% if it's true or not. But we do follow, and we've had success in following them. We found areas like their one core area that I call Larry's. We found that way, following the snaps. And so I think there could be a directional thing, but it could be also just doing what they do, just, walking down their trail and just, grabbing and something they do, or I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I have had success in following the snaps. Now, all the other structures, you have to really look at them. If it can be man-made, those arches, those are the toughest ones. We found an arch that was stuck in a stump and then stuck in the ground. Now that one doesn't happen by snow load. There's no way that happens. But then you find the ones that are up and they're underneath a tree. People say, well, the tree pinned it. They tucked it under. No, the tree fell on it. The tree grew and it's still growing. And that's why it's still alive underneath this big dead tree. Again, my opinion, and I'm not questioning anybody else's opinion. I'm just giving mine here. I'm not pointing anybody out or picking on anybody, or everybody has their own deal out there, and I respect everybody, and everybody's got their own voice. So, yeah, I do follow the snaps. I'm sorry, long-winded answer, and we've had success in following them.
I love long-winded answers, man. The more you talk, the better the show is. And I agree with you. Everybody has their opinions about things, and it is subjective, right? Nobody really knows unless you have one of these things in your basement and you've been studying it for 10 years. You really don't know anything about them. Or frankly, as far as I'm concerned, I've not seen one. So I'm still in the camp of I'm on the fence of whether they actually exist, because the evidence that we have so far, I've had this conversation with so many people recently. I've got a show in the hopper for next Friday as we record this now. It was sort of a closeout to 2022 and what happened in 2022 and what we're looking forward to and in Sasquatchery in 2023 with Pat over at Squatch Talk at the end of the year last year. And one of the things we talked about was it was almost like this lack of anything happening. Pat said, he sort of coined it beautifully. He said, we're like on the football field, and the Patterson-Gimlin film in 67 put us on the 5-yard line, and we literally haven't moved the ball down the field at all. I disagreed with Pat on some parts of that. I think in the limelight and really having evidence like the Patterson-Gimlin film come out, I think he's certainly right. But I think there's a lot of people in the field that I know I've talked to, a lot of investigators that are putting a lot of time in the woods, and I think they're finding things. I think they're having experiences, albeit they're anecdotal experiences. They're still having those experiences, and they're gathering data, because every single time somebody has an experience, you get a little bit of data from that experience, like yours, when something comes up as close and puts its face next to your face and huffs. Those kind of behaviors are experienced here in North Carolina and in California and in some parts of upstate New York. So you put all that stuff together and you start getting data that you can extract to say, this may be what they're doing or maybe what that means. But the evidence that we have or have had in the last few decades, outside of the hoaxes, has really come down to most people's answer is it's about the footprints. It's about the castings of the footprints, right? Where are you on that? Outside of your experiences, obviously, nobody has to convince Chris that Sasquatch is real because you've seen them twice, right? But for the rest of us who haven't had those experiences, the ball is still on the 5-yard line in most cases. And I have a tough time with the evidence that's presented out there. So how do you feel about the evidence that you've seen maybe over the last 8 or 10 years? Has anything really stuck out to you as being one of those things that, had you not had your sighting, would have pushed the ball down the field for you?
That's a really good question. I think I'm agreeing with Pat. There's guys, I agree with you too. There are people out there that have, we've learned from, and the prints and the snaps and the structures. It takes a lot of time in the woods to figure that out, and the knocks, where they're coming from, how to follow them, and how to follow the tracks, and all that. It takes a lot of experience, a lot of woods time, put boots on the ground. But in the last 40 years, 50 years, really, the best footage we still have is the Patterson-Gimlin film. That's the best. And we haven't really come close to it.
So I agree with you, and I'm still on the fence about the Patterson-Gimlin film, right? Some of the time, maybe 50% of the time, I'm thinking it's a real Sasquatch. The other 50% of the time, I'm not so sure. And then recently, I interviewed Michael Freeman, Paul Freeman's son, and Doug Hychek has been working on enhancing that Freeman footage for like 20 years. He and Cliff Barackman have been independently doing that. And I'm hoping that I'll get to see it soon or show it soon. I've had this stuff for like 2 months and I haven't been able to show it to anybody. So I'm chomping at the bit. Well, Paul's book is out and the Freeman Files is out there and it's included in the book. So you guys can go out and pick up the book over at Hanger One Publishing. But I really want to show people this footage because I'll be honest, outside of the Patterson-Gimlin film, the Freeman footage to me, the enhanced version of that footage is one of the best things I've seen, in my opinion, in a long time, because I was blown away because it literally looks like this thing is walking over and picking up a baby juvenile Sasquatch. And I think that's important for people to see. I really want people to see that. And because it changed my mind. I was really on the fence about the Freeman footage. And after I interviewed Thomas Steenberg, who really believed that Paul Freeman was a hoaxer, even after supporting him for decades, really. And I just don't get that vibe from what I've known of him through Michael and now this footage. I don't know if you've seen the Freeman footage, if you've seen maybe the enhanced footage. Where are you on that? Do you think that that's one of those pieces of footage that may be real, or do you have an opinion on that?
I've never seen the footage with the baby. I've seen the footage of the one where he says he's looking at the footprints and he looks up, he goes, "Oh, there it is." And he starts, that's number 2. That's number 2 in my book. You know, that's the 2 best pieces. And I'm sure there's others out there, but these are the 2 I'm 100% sure that those are Sasquatch. And I think a few of Todd's are 100% too. I think when the early days that Todd showed, like the one that stampers up that hill with that huge gate, you can't go up that hill that quick. And then that's just, I mean, his early stuff was good. And then I had him on my show and I questioned the other ones, you know, the Muppets, they all call them the Muppets. And after talking to him, then he makes you think twice. You know, he says, well, if I didn't get closer, would you get closer? Are you going to go up there and try and get closer to them guys and get that full body? So now he's saying that he's got the win all footage coming up, walking, running away. That's what he's saying. So, but those two early recordings definitely are my 1 and 2 for sure.
Yeah, the Freeman footage I'm talking about is the exact same video you're talking about. This happens right after he says, "There he is," or "There it is." And this thing walks across the path. That's when this thing walks over to this tree and picks this baby up off a tree.
Oh, I've never seen it.
Yeah, and you can pick it out. Doug picked it out back in the late 90s, early 2000. Doug saw it in the original photo or in the original video. I don't know how in the hell he saw it, but he did. And he worked to start enhancing that so everybody else could see it. And I'm telling you, what he's done is stabilize it. He bought software from the government to stabilize and enhance this video. And I'll be honest, it's impressive to me. And it's clear as day in the enhanced version that you can see this thing's little feet they're swinging around just like a baby being picked up by its mother or father and grabbing onto, like, wrapping its legs around this waist of this Sasquatch. So, you know, I had that conversation with Thomas Steenberg and he's like, "Well, Brian, you know, he could have had a minuet out there. Somebody could have had that could be a puppet or something." Yeah, it could be. But okay, Occam's razor, right? At some point, Occam's razor works in our favor if you believe any of this at all, that to think somebody as, and I don't want to use the word simple, but by Michael's own admission, his son, Paul Freeman, was a pretty simple man. He was a straightforward, hardworking dude, and he was out in the woods a lot looking for Bigfoot. It doesn't make sense for him, in my opinion, to try to fake something like that, right? And then to go to that same length to add a baby that in this grainy footage that most people are not even ever going to pick out, it just doesn't make sense to me. But a lot of people say the same thing about the PG film. You know, they give Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin a lot of credit and say, well, that's why they put breast on Patty, because most people wouldn't expect that. So that in and of itself makes it more real because it's more out there, right? I'm not so sure that's the case either. But I do agree with you that although the other videos, I've stated my opinion about Todd and his other videos, but that one video that you mentioned early on with this thing running up the hill, you know, I think Todd actually did a pretty good breakdown, and I don't know if maybe somebody like Thinker Thunker might have done a breakdown on it too. This thing basically runs up that hill and that incline faster than a normal person, a regular human being, could run downhill. That's pretty impressive. So that one is always stuck in my, it could be a possibility category for me.
Yeah, and then of course Les Stroud, being on Todd's side is pretty huge too. That speaks a lot. Speaks words, for sure about Todd.
Yeah, and that's I kind of pressed Les on that when I had him on the show, and he was on his side to a point, right? I think it's pretty much the same thing with Jeff Meldrum and the late John Bindernagel. I think everybody was cordial when it came to that. And, Les said I couldn't see anything with the original footage that proved to me that it was hoaxed, meaning the video itself. It's clearly a real video of something. Mm-hmm. One of the things that stuck out to me that I've talked to Kyle on the show about recently, Kyle Deshane from the Discovering Bigfoot podcast, is he's very much in Todd's camp on this, but just the difference in the look of the different purported Sasquatches in the video. I don't know. To me, it just, if they're all supposed to be, some even in California and then some up in BC, Canada, I just don't see the difference in the look because you just don't really see that a lot. But, again, I may go and be proven wrong about him, but at this point, I'm not so sure. You mentioned it earlier. I want to talk briefly about it before we move into some of your other stuff. Dogman. You mentioned it earlier on, and I wanted to touch on that because that's something that I've talked about a couple of times on the show recently. And I'm still not sure where I'm at on this Dogman phenomena. It's certainly become a very popular subject of late. There's been shows out there for years that do nothing but Dogman encounters. And I've had people on the show that have had Dogman encounters. I'm just not convinced that what they're seeing is actually a Dogman. We had a conversation recently. I've talked about it a couple of times on the show about these rogue kangaroos that exist here in the United States and how I believe, personal opinion here, but my personal opinion is at least some of the sightings that people have reported of Dogman or Dogman-like creatures are probably more than likely these rogue kangaroos because there is a population of them in this country. Have you talked to very many people that have had Dogman experiences, and where are you on that whole Dogman phenomenon?
Yeah, honestly, no. I got too much on my plate to worry about something else. But I've heard lots. I listen, I read podcasts, I read books, I listen to podcasts, and people have their experiences. I'm with the Native Americans on the Dogman thing. I think they're just evil spirits that are out in the forest. I just don't think anything's good about a Dogman personally. Like I said, I got too much going on with the Sasquatch and the new stuff that we're trying to do with all the frequencies and all that stuff. And, but I'm on the fence. I don't know anything about the subject too much, but from what I've gathered, I'll go with the Native Americans, and it's a evil kind of spirit that is out there in the forest.
I think I'm right there with you, man. So I know you've had other experiences outside of those with Sasquatch. So why don't you just walk us into what happened during those experiences?
When I was young, I didn't know that I actually had a Sasquatch experience when I was 10 until I got older. I was working for my father's boss here in Connecticut where there's sightings. I was a little kid. I didn't know that so I started investigating. But in the 70s, there's like 2 sightings right across the street from him on his property. And I would go up there and I would clear his trails. He had wood cutting trails all through the forest, and I would clear off the little sticks. I'd earn 50 cents for the day work, but he left me alone one time, and I was just sitting there and he left me alone. And all of a sudden the forest closed in on me and I couldn't move. And it just felt that there was something there. And then when I had that first experience in Missouri, I got that same exact feeling. I'm like, wow, that's what went on that day in the forest when I was 10. It was that there must have been something nearby that was watching me. and I couldn't throw it together because I was so young. But I put the pieces together years later when I got that same exact feeling. So, moving on in my younger years, we used to live on this street called Benton Street, and I had a bedroom. My sister, we shared a bedroom, and I remember one night I woke up in the middle of the night, and there was this ghostly apparition, kind of just like a perfect ghost you would see at Disney's Haunted Mansion. It was a perfect ghost. It had a big lawn sheets, and she would just float, and I would never ever go in the basement there after that. After I seen that ghost, I would never ever go in the basement, and for years. And then we moved out of there, and when we moved we were staying at my grandmother's house where they were building the house for us. And I remember one time I heard footsteps come down the hallway. Do, and I'm like, oh, is that you, Grandma? Aunt Millie? Who's that? And then all of a sudden the handle on the door starts rattling like this. Here goes the old heebie-jeebies again, and just rattling. I threw the covers over my head. I'm going, go away. And then all of a sudden, click, 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 walked away from the door. So that was my two spirit encounters when I was little, and the other one that I found out later, that was Sasquatch. And I haven't had anything recent again until my wife and myself saw an alien craft. The night of the elections, we went going out to vote, and I came out of the house and I turned to talk to her, and over the house was a craft the size of a football field, and it had 3 lights on it. It had a yellow light on the front, and then it had a red and a blue light on the back, and it was the size of a football field, and it was just floating. And I told Maria to look up at the sky, and she go, no, it's just a plane, because we seen one before. I'll have to go back to that one. I forgot about that. We seen one before together. I'm like, Maria, last time you wouldn't look, and you looked, and we seen it. So look this time. She looks up. She's like, oh my God, what is that? I'm like, what do you think that is? What do you think? And I'm running down the parking lot, and I'm pointing at it, and I'm looking, there's people out there. And this is the weirdest part about this interaction, is that there are people out in the parking lot, and we're looking, look up there. We're like almost yelling. And the people in the parking lot didn't even acknowledge us. It's like we weren't even there. Maria, she's the one that brought that up the next day, because I didn't really pay attention. I was watching the craft float away. We hopped in the car and we chased it. And then it got up to the woods, I don't know, 100, 200 yards up from our place. And then it just disappeared again. Poof, like that. The size of a football field. This thing was as blonde as the buildings that I take care of. I mean, 10 apartments, townhouses in a row. That's how long this thing was. And it just floated, and it made no noise, and it just floated. And then we got to the edge of the woods, and poof, gone. And Maria's like, what happened? What just happened? I'm telling you what just happened. We just had a UFO experience. It was 50 feet over our heads. It made no sound. It was all triangles, and there was a copper color. I remember I could see it in plain as day. I need someone to contact me who knows how to draw. It was really unbelievable. And it was like it looked like a hero, a sandwich hero. And when it went up like this, it was a hexagon. It banked up. So we saw the top of the craft like this, and it made no noise. And it was just hovering, and it was just traveling like that. It was crazy, man. That'll blow your mind when you see something like that. And other than that, that's about all the other stuff from the Sasquatch. We had some Sasquatch activity 2 weeks before here at the house, before the craft too. I can tell you that story if you want to hear that one.
Yeah, before you go into that, talk about the other experience you had with your wife when you saw the other craft.
All right, actually, I forgot about this one. Topped that one. We were coming home. It was like August. We were coming home from dinner. It was like 6:00. Plenty of light out. And I'm driving, and I look over like that, and I'm like, Maria, look over there. And she looks over. She goes, oh, that's just a helicopter. I'm like, Maria, look over there. And she looks over, and 50 feet above the tree line is this saucer. And I've seen pictures of it. Other people have caught it with like round globes around it, and they were spinning. And we can see it plain as day. And she looks at it this time. She looks, and she turns around, and she goes, I don't want to talk about it. Just like that. And it was plain as day. And in both circumstances, did we ever think to take our phone out and photograph or record anything? You know, it happens. Everybody says, why don't you? Well, you don't think about that stuff when it's going down like that. And that's why I think when you see this stuff on TV and people don't get it, that is more than likely hoaxed because they're filming it. They got their phones out. You don't think of that stuff that quick when that stuff is going down. But so we've seen two crafts, and Maria's not into this. She's not into the Bigfoot thing. I mean, she supports me. She's not into the Bigfoot thing. She's not into the alien thing at all, and all the other stuff that goes on over here near my place. But it's happened, and we've had some crazy stuff go on here. I had a coyote leg left at my back door, ripped off the dog fresh, blood all over it at my back door because I didn't get to go to my gifting. So I gifted with them for 6 years, and I had my gallbladder went on me. Couldn't get back up there for a month. So they actually came and found me, and that's the only explanation I have, and ripped that dog's leg off. I felt so bad for the dog. I got pictures of it. Maria's the one that spotted it. She's like, what's down there by the door? And I'm looking, I'm like, I have no idea what that is. I opened up the door and coyote leg ripped off the dog.
Let's talk a little bit about the gifting thing, because I've had some experiences I've posted about recently on our social media here, because we've had some things on our property that have happened that are really strange with sort of this gifting stump. I'm not going to go into it. The listeners have heard this so many times, but just for your sake, so you kind of get some background. Walking the dogs, I don't know, this was probably 3 or 4 months ago. Same trail we always walk around our property. There's 40 acres of property here. And I look over on this stump that I've passed by probably 150, 200 times in the last year. And something catches my eye. It's like this white thing that sticks out on this stump. I go over, and it is a turtle shell turned upside down, and it's stuck into the side of this stump and wedged into, it's an old cedar stump, and it's really mushy. So it was very simple to wedge something in there upside down, and it's bleached with the sun. It's clearly been there for, however long, I don't know. And I thought that was really strange. So I take the turtle shell, and I'm like, what could this possibly be? And I thought, well, why not try it? Right. I've never tried the gifting thing. I've talked to people that have done it and believe in it wholeheartedly. So I take this little rock it's actually off the grave of our little Yorkie that passed away a couple of years ago. It's like this little smooth rock with a purple heart on it that says love. So I take it and put it on the stump, and I post about it on social media. Somebody on Instagram says, hey, you should put some apples out, right? They like apples. So I take an old apple that's about to be rotten in the fridge, and I stick it on a stick, and I stick it down in the middle of the stump, and I put a camera up, a trail cam, maybe 30 feet away on a tree facing it. And everybody's like, well, if it's a gifting thing, they're not going to come around because there's a camera. And I'm like, well, okay, I don't know, but I'm not going to be the guy who says I'm going to do all this and then not try to capture something, right? Because what if something walks up and I captured on, a trail cam? Because it snaps photos and then it records like 10 seconds of video or whatever. Well, like 3 days go by, I get nothing but raccoons I pull the SD card every morning. The apple's still there, untouched. The rock's still there, untouched. So after like 3 days of this, the apple's starting to kind of deteriorate and get a little moldy. And I'm thinking, well, nothing happens tomorrow. I'm going to get the apple. But I pulled the SD card out, and the batteries were dead in the camera, so I needed to change them. So I just pulled the SD card out, came in the house, forgot about the camera. We get up the next morning and go walk the dogs. And the apple is still there on the stick in the middle of the stump where I put it. But there's a bite taken out of the apple. And it literally looks like something picked the apple up on the stick, took a bite, and then put it back where it was. Or it would have had to get down on all fours or however they'd do it and not take it off the stick, but take a bite out of the apple. So I take a picture of it and I send it to Wayne, who hosts the Paranormal Odyssey show for me. And I said, dude, tell me I'm crazy, or tell me I'm not crazy. What does that look like? So something took a bite out of the apple. I don't know what it was, but we caught it for, like I said, 3 days. There were raccoons all around it. They never touched the apple. The bite wasn't taken out of the apple while I recorded the raccoons. Was it a deer? Was it some kind of ungulate that came through and did that? I don't know. I'm not saying it was Bigfoot by any means, but it's strange, right? So I've left stuff out there. I put a new apple out there 3 days ago. and nothing's happened to the apple. And I have not put the SD card back in the camera. I really need to do that. But so let's talk a little bit about the gifting. What have you been able to experience? A, why did you start gifting? And have you had other experiences where you feel like these things have interacted with you via gifting? Obviously, other than the bloody leg that was left at your back door.
Right. So we started gifting because we were at this area for I'd say a little over a year, and of course I was watching YouTube, and one of my favorite channels on YouTube is Snow White. She's a great friend of mine, and if you guys have never seen her channel before, she's had some amazing stuff go on at her place. She's just got some crazy prints on her front door that will blow your mind, like crazy prints. So I was watching, and I figured that was the next step, but we couldn't figure out where to start gifting. And I really think, and I know this is a little early to bring this up, but now that the more I think about it, quantum entanglement has a lot to do with what's going out in the forest. We were searching for a place to gift with them because we figured that was the next step. We checked out their stuff. They know we're checking their stuff out. They've knocked at us. We were walking down this one place, and we got knocked at, and it was like 50 feet off the trail. So we went and we walked over to see where the knocks came from, and there was a big rock, and it's in the middle of the woods and just sitting there. So you know what? Let's gift here at this rock. This is going to be our gifting spot. So we laid everything out. I got asked people, what do we leave out? Tobacco, apples, blah, 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 everything. And nothing happened for a month. Everything just sat there. Everything just sat there. And one time I'm like, talking to my buddy Larry, I'm like, Larry, when are they going to realize that this stuff is for them? We're just talking. We were smoking at the time. We had a cigarette there. We left. We come back 2 days later. Everything's gone off the top of the rock. Now it takes us an hour to get to the spot. It's in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the forest. You can't find it unless you know where it is or you stumble upon it. Everything's gone. The tobacco, the apples, the picture. We had a picture drawn of them. Everything, the feathers, everything was taken. So then we started coming back and forth with them, and we introduced peanut butter. And the first 2 times we put peanut butter up, they twisted it in half. The jar was twisted in half and, just mangled. No teeth marks, just twisted. It was ripped. So the next time I came up, I put the peanut butter jar up and I showed them how to twist the lid. 6 years, never found another peanut butter jar. 6 years, nowhere to be found. We've looked everywhere in a 1/4 mile radius around there for those peanut butter jars. We never found another single jar. And it just kept on progressing, and we played games, we'd make it harder for them. We put the apples in trees, and by the end of it, we were burying our gifts in Tupperware containers under the ground, under rocks and soil, and leaving the same rock that we had on there since day one as a marker stone. Everything I tell you, by the way, you can go to my channel at Discover Sasquatch on YouTube, and you can see all this. It's everything I tell you, you can see. Even the knock that we picked up is on my channel, so you can go and look at it. So I'm not fibbing here and trying to get subscriptions. Everything I say, you can see. So we've been trading for 6 years, and we would come, all the rocks would be off the hole, the Tupperware lid would be popped, everything would be gone. They didn't like Granny Smith apples. They would sit in a tree and rot. Nothing would ever come in there. There was never a deer print. There was never a raccoon print. There was no varmints. Maybe once there were squirrel teeth marks on an apple, but everything was always taken. There was never crumbs. We always pierced them through the branches, and you can see it all. And we would leave peanut butter jars on logs and put a rock on top, and the peanut butter jar would be taken, and the rock would be right underneath where the peanut butter jar was. There's no way that any other animal in the forest is going to come and take that peanut butter jar, and the rock is going to fall off that top of the lid and land right underneath it. We always tried to make it prove that it takes hands for whatever was doing it would do it. And we had a lot of cool stuff happen up there. I mean, we had something jump out of a tree, we figured, and land on the ground, and it actually shook the ground that we were under while we were there. And my buddy went and got his machete out of his backpack and said, I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, did you just feel that? He's like, I'm getting my machete out. I don't care. It actually shook the ground. And we had a lot of stuff go down up there. We'd have rocks thrown at us while we were there, and knocks go on while we were there. And We got presents, feathers. We had one quartz stone that they would take and bring back and take and bring back. And we actually used to put stuffed monkeys in the trees, and they would come and play with them and throw them on the ground, and we'd tie them. One time we tied them together, right? And the only way to get it off was this branch that was like 12 feet high. Well, we came back and that monkey was off that branch and it was on the ground with its hands still tied. So whatever took it off slid it up that branch. It's the only way, unless you untied it. They didn't untie it. That monkey disappeared for a year. A year to the date, the same week, it was brought back. And it was well taken care of. If you left any stuffed animal in the forest for a year, snow, rain, wind, dirt, it would be, this thing was like it was brand new. It had like it looked like it was shiny. It was well taken care of. And it came back the same week. You can see all this again. This is all on my that video is called "Who Took Larry's Monkey." Everything you can see, I tell you can hear the rock throws. I take a little extra time so people can hear it and experience what we were experiencing there. And then the property sold. 7th year, they were following us. I found a tree structure that year that was magnetic north. Put a compass right on it, magnetic north. And 2 days later, we went back up and the thing was on the ground. They knocked on the trees while we were doing it. While we had the compass that day, you hear 2 knocks in back of us, whack, whack. And then, the following couple of weeks or whatever, we went back, it was on the ground. So, because we like you do, you say the same path. And as for your turtle shell, I'm curious to see if you get dead moles in it, because that's happened to a few of my friends with the turtle shell. You'll have they'll leave you dead moles in it for the gift to you. So I'm curious to see where that goes. But with the cameras there, activity stopped. That's true. They wouldn't come. They just wouldn't come. And they didn't like hot dogs. They didn't like dog biscuits. Everybody says they love dog food. My guys didn't eat the dog biscuits. They just left them. Hot dogs, they would never touch. So if that tells you, son, don't eat hot dogs. But they love the peanut butter and bananas. We fed them meat for a little while and we stopped because if we didn't make it up there that week or it was a little late, they'd come and slap Larry's house. And at night, and Larry's wife wasn't having anything to do with that. So we figured that it was the meat and we stopped that. So I don't tell anybody to leave them meat. It was just strictly after that peanut butter and apples. And that was it. And it was quite the experience, man. I cried when they sold the property. I literally did because they were following us. They were knocking on the trees, letting us know they were back of us. And when that property sold, it was probably, I did cry. It was sad. I mean, when you interact with something like that and you're getting results, it's just to me, it was very sad. And we're trying to get back in there and trying to find the owners of the property, but we haven't been able to have any luck yet.
Yeah, I can imagine, man. And like I said, the gifting thing has always fascinated me. And I honestly didn't know what to make of it until I felt like I sort of had that experience myself. And, I can't say definitively what took a bite out of this apple, but I feel in my heart that that's what it was. I just don't know any other explanation other than, again, like I said, Occam's razor is sometimes the simplest answer may be the most outrageous answer in some cases when other things just don't make sense. So I don't know. I'm going to continue to try to do it. I like I said, I put another apple out there a couple of days ago and nothing's happened so far. So I'm going to see. You mentioned something earlier I wanted to go back to and sort of clarify and talk about. You mentioned some project that you had going on with frequencies. What is that? Can you talk about that and tell us a little bit about what that's entails?
Okay, so I was Mr. Flesh and Blood this whole time. These guys were an animal that lived in the forest, well-organized animal, and they just good at hiding. Well, I went to the Green Swamp. I travel. I like to go to different places. And I went down to see my buddy Chris Connor. He's an investigator down in Florida, and went into the Green Swamp and we went to this one place in there, and he's big into Skinwalker Ranch. So we take these meters with us. These are tri-field meters, the ghost hunters use them. But we set them to RF, radio frequency. We're measuring the microwaves, the radiation that's in the forest. Well, we get to the first day we're down there, we get to his one area he calls the fridge. And they were following us in. We knew they were behind us. And we got to it and we put a little one of those Sasquatch chips, pheromone chips in the tree. And all of a sudden we had 2 of them on us, and they started throwing rocks up into the palm trees. And all of a sudden that meter tops out. It goes up to 1 dash 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 dash. It's like hitting a jackpot at the casino, and it's just going beep. So we have physical activity while we're receiving so much radiation. If you were in a Faraday box, you would cook. That's how much. And you don't get that. You're not supposed to get that in the forest. We've had people reach out to us that are satellite techs and saying, and did research on the meters. And he said, there's the only way that meter is doing that is if it's from above. And the only way if it was from above, it would be a drone or you were being followed by something that would track you. There's no way, because it's such a broad frequency on these meters, there's no way you are receiving that much radioactivity thrown at you. So the next day we get to this place that he calls Knox Creek. And now this day it's just him and myself. And we're going across. He's like, we got to go this way. So I go over to the little brook there, and I fall in the brook. And I'll tell you after what happened there. And we get over to this little area, and he goes, this is the area where I can ask for the knocks and get them. And so he gets up. We're filming all this. Again, this is on my channel. You can see it's on the interview. It's called The Veil. And he goes, so Chris doesn't think I'm crazy and telling you I asked for a knock. Can I get that knock? And 10 seconds later, sure as hell, knock right on the tree. He's like, there it is. I'm like, there it is. And then all of a sudden, his phone starts getting scanned. There's like his phone that's going in and out of apps, trying to scan. It's like they're scanning their phone. Something's scanning his phone. He's getting to his work stuff. It's into his pharmacy card. It's into all his private stuff, trying to break into the phone. He's like, what's going on with your phone? What's going on with your phone? And I take my phone out, and I look at my phone. I'm like, no, there's nothing. I just got this one. It's 2 weeks old. And I open it up, and there's a message I'm typing out to somebody, and it says CMBB, 62 lines of it. So we figure butt dial. It was in my pocket, just by chance, those 4 letters, 60 lines of it. So that's what we wrote it off as. And we saved 12 lines and we photographed them. So we would have, just in case we were wrong, and tucked it away. And we left. We had a couple other minor things happen today, but nothing that crazy, wood knocks and stuff like that. We get home. I take a shower. It was 95. It was July. I had my eye detached, retina detached, and had to go cancel my trip for spring, and where it's July, it was hot. So we got back to the house. I took a shower. I get out, I look at my phone, and what's back on my phone? Sure as hell, BBCM. Now it's capital letters, exclamation points, ... small case letters. No more pocket dial. No more pocket dial. We couldn't figure it out. So he calls his wife off. He's like, Beata, come over here and check this out. What do you think this means? She goes, I know what it means. Our jaws drop. We're like, what do you mean you know what it means? We've been trying to think about it all afternoon. We couldn't figure it out. Chris, Betty, Beata, and Mark, the first 4 initials of the 4 people that have been in the swamp for the last 8 years looking for the Bigfoot. Their first initials. Boom. Then I'm like, what is going on? 2 weeks later, Connecticut, my buddy comes down from Mass. I'm taking him up to my area. We get up, we're approaching the hill. What happens? His phone starts going haywire. All of a sudden, Larry and Mark's channel comes on, Sawdust Beast. It just starts playing YouTube video. It was off in his pocket. It just starts playing YouTube video. We get to the top of the hill. My meter pins out. Rocks start flying in from 4 corners. We're surrounded. 4 of us are up on top of this hill. My meter went for 15 minutes, topped out on the top of the mountain in Connecticut. The stuff just doesn't happen. It doesn't go. And I had so many people reach out, and and we can't say it's Bigfoot. We're not saying that it's Bigfoot, but it's something related. We're having physical activity, and then we're receiving that radioactivity. And 16 dash and above on these meters, we should not be gathering. And mine was pinned out. We even wrote the company. We were like, what does it mean when it's topped out? It's topped out. That's what they told us. Literally, it's topped out. It can't go any higher. But we had a lot of people reach out to us. And ever since we started following this, man, Tesla, we're looking at a Tesla and all this other stuff that goes around with it. We're starting to figure out that the Skinwalker Ranch is going on, and all this stuff that goes on is in high energy areas, high frequency areas. The ghosts are attracted to them. The Sasquatch are attracted to them. Alien activities attracted to these areas. What's about these areas with the frequency? There's something going on. There's quantum entanglement. They're all entangled together. Mr. Moorhead is right about what he's right about, and I think that's the next step. I think we need to take that step. That's all these years they've had their chance of wood knocking and taking pictures of footprints. And if we start looking into this quantum entanglement, like Tesla, smartest man on the planet, even Einstein said it. And he says the keys to the universe is numbers 3, 6, and 9. Nobody can figure it out. He was sending electricity under the ground for 4 miles. Scientists just lately sent it 4 inches. And this was way back when he had it. So there's something going on with the frequencies and the energy levels, and we just can't afford the equipment that they have out at the ranch. And to carry it into the field with us, it would be just. But if there's more people that would look into this a little bit and say, hey, maybe these guys got something, and they have scientists out there. It's just not the woo feeling in your belly. Oh, I got this feeling in my belly and this happened. No, this is like we were taking scientific instruments out into the field, and we're getting these readings, and we're getting this, and then we're getting the Sasquatch activity right around it. We're catching EVPs now. Ever since that time in the Green Swamp, man, I've caught so many EVPs it'll blow your mind. Like full conversations that I'm hearing one word, the guy in back of me 10 feet is hearing a different word, and our recorders are picking up both of the words, and it's just crazy. That word Ahu, you ever hear Ahu out in the woods while you're looking for these guys? It's all over. Everybody's heard it. People catch it all over the place. And the Wadahu, like Mike Patterson up in Canada, and we're picking up the same things, and they're picking up the same things in West Virginia. And to me, I think it just makes sense. It's just, that's the next step. So that's what I think about the frequency. I'm sorry if I get too excited. I just get, when this stuff comes up, I get a little excited about it. But I think that's the next step. I think that's what we take. And I'm not saying that again, IMO. I'm not saying that that's definitely what's going on, but take a look into it, everybody, if you get a chance. It doesn't, they can pick up a $16 meter and bring it out with you. But we're getting physical activity while we're getting hit with microwave radiation.
Yeah, man, I love the experience and I love the enthusiasm, because I've had some conversations recently with people. I've always been in the flesh and blood camp, and I've left my mind open to other experiences. I get shit on the show all the time because I have guests talking about the UFO encounters, and, I get Apple Podcast reviews and people are saying it should be called UFO Odyssey. Well, you know what? People are having all these experiences. And when I first started talking to people about Bigfoot, I would get these, there was orbs, and then there was this ship that I saw, and all this other weird stuff that went on. And the first time I had Ron Moorhead on the show, we talked about some of that stuff. And people, I've been to conferences where Ron is there speaking, and there's people in the audience, with their arms crossed and their eyes rolling, and they don't really get into some of the things that Ron talks about. But the more that I've had conversations recently with people, we've had our chance, right? We've been on the 5-yard line since 1967. And we're no closer to discovery of these things. So one of two things is happening. Either they don't exist at all, and every anecdotal story that I've ever documented or anybody else has ever documented is 100% misidentification, or it's bullshit, or there's something else going on here. And I'm inclined to believe that most of the people that I've talked to on my show have told the truth about their encounters. I have personal friends who have seen these things that I 100% believe they saw a Sasquatch. So that sort of gets tossed out. And if that's the case, then this traditional go out in the woods and do these calls and beat on the trees and try to get evidence isn't working. I'm with you. I think we need to somehow move into a different direction and take a different look at this. The problem with that is, playing devil's advocate, right? I've been the proponent of getting people in the scientific community involved and really looking into the subject. And the second you go down that road of these things may be more than flesh and blood, or there may be something else going on, whether it's quantum entanglement or whatever, interdimensional things going on, people just scoff and turn up their nose. I tried to have that conversation with Jeff Meldrum and it didn't work at all. Like he's a hardcore flesh and blood anthropologist, scientist that says no, these are some sort of hominoid, they're a hominin, whatever the case may be. But I agree that we have to start opening up our minds and exploring other options, because I believe that everything is connected. You know, these weird experiences that people have in the woods, like you have had with your friend Larry in the woods, you're having these kind of experiences in conjunction with Sasquatch activity. That's not a coincidence, in my opinion. They have to be connected in some way. Now, what that connection is, I don't know. But I too, like you, believe that there has to be something, and it may be quantum entanglement. So that's a road that we need to explore, in my opinion. And I say we, but I do my research behind a microphone. I don't get out in the woods much unless it's here on my property. But there's a ton of people out there doing this work. And I think you have to open up your mind to say there may be something to this other part of the Bigfoot phenomenon. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think it's really important for people to hear. Let's talk a little bit about you've mentioned it a couple of times, your YouTube channel. Let's talk about your podcast. What do you have going on there? When people go to your YouTube channel, what are they going to find? And if they tune into the podcast, have you got anything coming up on the horizon that you want to tell people about?
Yeah. On the YouTube channel, you're going to find a lot of field videos. I'm starting to get into the YouTube short, where I just posted like a structure that I found the first time we ever went to Larry's. There was a 6-inch tree weaved in between 5 of them, 30 feet across in a straight line. And the stump to that tree is 6 feet up from where it's laying. There's no way that tree fell, and somebody said that grew like that. They're all the same size tree. It didn't grow like that. And but anyways, I got YouTube shorts like that of like I just found a 4-print trackway here in Connecticut, 13 inches, 5-foot gate coming out off the mountain. I got that little video. Plus I got a larger video on my channel. Again, everything I talk about tonight, you can go to Discover Sasquatch on YouTube and find everything I talk about. Like the phone thing, that's called the veil. We show the phone. We show the EVPs. I even got an EVP when I fell into the brook over there. It says, hey, look, it's Chris. Southern draw, never been in the green swamp in my life. Now, Chris Connor's with me. He's in back of me. So what Chris are they talking about? I'm the one that fell in the water, and then that EVP happened. So it's like, hey, look, it's Chris. So whatever's down in that swamp knows them 4 people. That you can see that on the channel. Now my podcast, I've had everybody from Todd Standing. I've had Cliff on. I have Doug coming on next Thursday on KGRA. You can find 2 shows. You can find one of my shows on KGRA digital broadcasting, and then my own podcast on Tuesday nights at 8. And I've had a bunch of great people on my show, and I do it to talk to people. You know, I love talking about it and meeting new people. And I have come to there's no coincidence in Bigfoot. If you are gathering the same evidence in all these states, this isn't a coincidence. This is what's happening. It just doesn't happen. People need to wake up a little bit and give some of this thought. At least don't pass it off as nothing, because if you really look into it, it can happen. Like I said, the quantum physics, 3 doctors this year won the Nobel Peace Prize. Quantum physics, Nobel Peace Prize. Now that's huge. They said this stuff could never happen. And look at what's his name, Musk. He's just got that computer coming out you control with your brain. It's not that far out of reach, and but that's what you can find on the channel. Field work. I put good time into the videos. They're not cheesy little just walking around the videos. I make it obvious. I explain everything. I just started doing the talking head thing, and it seems to be working out. They're good videos, and so that's what's going on. And we are opening up a website. It's going to be piggybacking off my website right at the moment, and it's going to be called Page 3-6-9, and it's going to be for all interactions. If you see a Bigfoot with an orb, with an alien chasing it through the woods, we're gonna do research on it, and if we find it legit, we're gonna make maps about them. You're gonna be able to go there. We're gonna see if they have audio. That's the biggest pain. We're gonna want people to come and put audio on it, and we want to show everybody that this is happening just not in our areas, but there's happening in Washington State. It's happening in Vermont. I mean, I've got some crazy vocals now that I'm almost certain that the Sierra Sounds is a language, because you're getting the Wadahoo, the Ahu, the Wadahoo in 10 different states, all different tones of voices. So that's what we got coming up too. So we got the channel, and we got the radio station, and we got the new web page coming out. So
awesome. I will link to all that in the show notes. You guys go over and check out Chris, Discover Sasquatch. Chris, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. I've had a blast talking to you, and we'll have to do this again, man.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Yeah, I got a couple more for you too. So we'll definitely need to get together again. I'll tell you about the black chopper that was over at my house a couple weeks ago before the spaceship showed up.
What a teaser.
I can tell you now if you want, if you got the time. It won't take too long.
Yeah, go ahead and tell us about it. I'll figure out how to edit it in. So,
okay. So, there was a sighting in my town, which doesn't happen too often, but it did. And the same brook that all the others, it's the same spot. All the other sightings came down. And a couple days later, Maria out front of here has a hummingbird feeder. And she go out, and every morning she feeds every animal she can. She feeds turkeys, the deer if she could, everything. And that hummingbird feeder, all the water is gone, and all the flowers around the base of the hummingbird feeder are on the ground in a pile. So she's like, I don't know, Chris, but I think your friends are back over here again. I'm not too sure. So the next 3 days in a row, the same thing happens. And on the third day, one of the flowers is gone. So now she's hot. She knows what it is. She goes, they came, they took one of my flowers. I want it back. I said, well, how can I help you with that? I can't tell you how you can get your flower back. The next day, what comes back? The fifth flower in the pile with the thing. That night, I'm sleeping up in my bedroom, and my grandkids live with me, and they're taking a bath. The water starts running. All of a sudden, my bedroom's shaking. So I thought the pipes were ready to burst. I thought, I'm get up out of bed. I'm like, what the heck is that? And it wasn't the bathroom. And Maria shouts from downstairs, there's a helicopter hovering over our house right now, 50 feet above the tree line. Sure as hell, blacked out helicopter. Now, we did research upon research trying to find that flight over my apartment, because they have to be registered. Even Army, it has to be registered. We couldn't find anything. The activity stopped after that. What happened to what happened? Did she get chased away? Did he get chased away by the chopper? We came up with two things. Either it was a warning for me, and the Sasquatch got scared, or they were here for the Sasquatch because they're tracked. So only two things we could come up with. But having a helicopter hovering over your house 50 feet is a experience too. And then 2 weeks later, the craft comes. So she's had a rough time for the last couple months, and she's glad it's been quiet here for a while.
God, I can imagine. That's crazy, man. I've heard that kind of stuff going on, and I've got in some weird conversations with Jody Cook about Dogman on the show and stuff, and Jody swears up and down that he has all kinds of like government interference with him talking about Dogman, and it's just there's something to it, man. There's a there. I
think it was a warning. I think that we're onto something to really, honest to God, with this quantum entanglement. And I haven't had my eye detached again for the third time, and I've never had a head injury to it. There's something going on with all that. I can't explain it. And I'm not saying that Bigfoot has anything. I've already heard this. He's claiming that Bigfoot detached his eye. No, I'm not claiming Bigfoot detached my eye. I'm just saying there's something weird that a 53-year-old man's eye keeps on detaching. Who knows what it's from? But yeah, thank you. I had a great time, and I would love to come back.
They say